Good morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's 8 o'clock on the nose. And welcome to Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources. We have 4 bills today. I don't know if we'll get to all 4 of them, but we'll see what we can do and go from there. Let's go ahead and take roll today. We haven't done that for a while. I know you've been doing it just visually, but
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Senator Baldwin.
I'm here.
Senator Ellis.
Present.
Senator Guru just stepped out.
excused.
Senator Jones.
Here.
And Chairman.
Thank you. Here.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and I was also thinking, most of the Senate committees are not requiring a second, and I don't think we need to either. So I wanted to mention that before we get started. So as long as someone makes the motion to move something, we'll just leave it at that. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and start with Senate File 41, Skill-Based Amusement Games, Authorized Locations.
This one?
41?
Okay.
Yeah. This one was a bill that was worked by the Joint Revenue Interim Committee, of which Senator Baldwin and I were both on. And I am not sure if, who's going to take us off on it. Is Charlie, maybe? Online?
Yeah, he's, Director Moore's online.
Oh, let's go ahead and let him go first.
Very good. Chairman Schuler, this is Charlie Moore of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. Did you want me to kick this off?
You bet. It'd be great if you would.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Caught me off guard slightly. Senate file, again, good morning, committee members, and I apologize for not being able to attend the meeting this morning. And thank you for allowing us to be a part of this remotely here in Casper. Senate File 41, as you had said, Chairman Schuler, was worked in the Revenue Committee this last summer. And just kind of the 30,000 foot, page 1, you see no red line. Page 2, you see where they had, your committee had added in the language to limit the operation of skill-based amusement games to truck stops and also where they sell liquor, malt liquor, beverages, etc. You also then defined the truck stop means a business premise that is, and then you went into A, B there and delineated that out some. On page 3, you added the language, skill-based amusement games shall only be located for play at an establishment except as provided in subsection E of this section. And then going on to line 13 through 19, you added subsection E, any operator who before September 14th, 2022 had a skill-based amusement game located at a place of business that does not meet the definition of establishment in Wyoming statutes 1125-102A, Roman numeral et 16. On April 1st of 2023 shall be authorized to continue operating the skill-based amusement game if the operator otherwise meets the requirements to operate skill-based amusement games. You also put an effective date of April 1st, 2023 into the legislation. That's all I have at this time, Chairwoman, excuse me.
Any questions for Director Moore? Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my first question, Director Moore, would be skill games, and I've got a few, Madam Chair. Would you rather I just
Oh, go
rattle
ahead.
them off
Yep,
all
rattle 'em
in
off.
one?
Mhm.
The first one is how many skill-based amusement games has the commission approved since the passage of Senate File 56?
Thank you, Chairman Ellis, or excuse me, I apologize for that. Chairman Schuler, Senator Ellis, I will defray and turn that over to Mr. Laramendi to answer those questions for you, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, Mr. Laramundi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Ellis, do you want to know what we currently have in operation or what we have originally approved in, I guess it would have been 2021? The number has actually reduced a little since the original approvals.
I guess what I'm understanding is if knowing the reduced numbers, what we started with in 2021, you said there's a reduced numbers, but my question is, have you approved any new games since 2021 with the passage of 56?
We have not.
Okay, and then can you provide an explanation about the reduced numbers?
So the reduced numbers, we've had several locations. Actually, I shouldn't say several. We've had about 8 locations that have closed their doors, have closed up shop, and that's what caused the reduced numbers. When the locations are closed, the games have been removed and those locations are closed.
So for clarification, Mr. Laramundi, how many fewer machines are in Wyoming then?
We started, let me pull that number. We currently have, give me 1 second here. Computer's running a little bit slow this morning.
Actually, I think we all are this morning. At least I know I am.
So there's currently 830 skill-based amusement games in operation, and we had started out with 864. So we've reduced about 34 games.
Okay. And Mr. Laramundi, just by comparison, I'm trying to pull up the gaming study, but I believe, how many more historic horse racing machines do we have in Wyoming? I'm curious to know how many we had in 2021 versus how many we have today.
I'd have to go back to pull 2021 numbers. That might take me a minute. I can tell you how many we have today in operation fairly easily. Let's see. As of today, we currently have 1,862 historic horse racing terminals in 32 locations throughout the state. And I'd have to go back to look and pull the numbers from the previous years.
Okay.
Operational.
Madam Chair, thank you for letting me ask these
Sure,
questions.
sure.
I am curious, Mr. Laramundi, with paragraph E, that's the grandfathering clause. And I'm curious to know if we didn't have paragraph E, how many machines would need to go away or be relocated if we did away with the grandfathering clause?
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, as it stands right now with paragraph E, that wouldn't remove any of the current operations. We currently have,
Madam Chair, my question is, if we removed paragraph E and we didn't grandfather in anything, and so we said the only establishments that are allowed to have these machines are truck stops and liquor license holder establishments, who would be affected and how many machines?
Madam Chair, we would have 10 locations that would be affected and roughly 40 games.
Madam Chair, Mr.
Follow-up?
Laramundi, what kind of locations are these that would fall outside those definitions?
We would have 8 smoke shops, 1 laundromat, and 1 hotel that it's not attached to the lounge part of the hotel.
Follow up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm just curious, this definition of truck stop, I've looked at all the definitions for states that have skill-based amusement games. I've looked everywhere to see what constitutes a truck stop, and I just don't know where this definition came from. Do you have any explanation of why it's 2 acres and a certain gallon amount to qualify as a truck stop?
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, we do not. We're not sure where the definition was derived from or how it was come up with as well.
Was it just Spacematics proposal?
It might have been.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Senator Baldwin may have an answer, even though his voice is gone. I'll bet he remembers working on this truck stop portion.
Madam Chairman, you have much more faith in my memory than I do. This was a lengthy discussion in the Revenue Committee, and I can't honestly tell you who brought that before, but there was a basis, how many gallons are pumped, et cetera, and we did talk about that at length. And I can't tell you where the original definition came from, but those were the numbers we came up with. Particular discussion was how many gallons they go through. That was a big deal as we went through that. The acreage wasn't such a big deal, but the actual gallons of fuel pumped was. And somebody in the audience may have the answer for that, but that definition was brought to us with a baseline first. Sorry, I don't have a voice, and sorry, my memory's not better, Madam
That's
Chairman.
pretty good. Any other questions for Director Moore? Oh, Senator Jones?
Madam Chair, is there a possibility that some convenience stores might qualify under the truck stop designation?
Director Moore?
Chairman Schuler, Senator, I'm not sure on that. And if I may go back slightly and try to fill in a little of the background, I believe this bill was primarily put forth from input from the industry. As I recall our discussions this last summer in interim committee, I would have to get with Mr. Laramendi and look at some of our potential locations and things to answer your question, Senator. I apologize for that.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Follow up. Go ahead.
Also, I have a couple more questions. Do most truck stops have designated rooms that 21 and older citizens could be in there?
Director?
Chairman Schuler, Senator, thank you for the question. No, a lot of them don't. So what we have in our rules and regulations, which are soon to be promulgated, we have defined any of those under 21 areas to where they are required in our rules to be have a half wall cordoned off, have definitely a designated area. So in those locations, in those truck stops that would not have those already built designated areas, they would have to come up with a solution, bring it to the commission, and the commission would review it, and then we would either authorize that or deny that request at that time.
Follow up? No? Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Director Moore? Thank you so much. If you'll just hang in there for a little bit, there might be some more questions coming down the pike. All right, let's go ahead and open it for public testimony. Anyone in the room? Come on up. Introduce yourself, even though we may already know you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. I will be brief. We're going through our bill review process right now and intending to send you our final positions later today, but I will tell you that at this point in time, the county commissioners are in support of this legislation and would suggest that you move it forward. There have been some concerns about the local control element of this issue. We haven't quite cracked that code, but this is certainly a means of providing some control that the commissioners are interested in. And with that, I'd stand for any questions and appreciate your indulgence as I leave after this.
Questions for Jeremiah? I just have one quick one. Have they noticed any uptick in law enforcement issues thus far in the counties where we have these?
Madam Chairwoman, I've not heard of that issue quite yet. Perhaps the director has, but at this point, I've not.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Jeremiah? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else like to testify? Come on up. Welcome. Go ahead and introduce yourself, even though you're well known. Infamous.
Or infamous. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. We support this legislation. It's rather ironic because I just came from another committee where we had 2 liquor bills, and we managed to fix them by approaching an issue while still remaining moderate and temperate in how you deal with things. Gaming, like liquor licenses, You can get too many, and if you have too many, it has a negative impact on the community. And so that's part of the reason we support this. Expansion is going to happen. I have a lot of retailers, including clubs and places like that are looking forward to it. Not as many as one would think. I would say maybe 200 at this point, more locations. So 50 to 75% increase in the number of locations we have. A lot of those businesses didn't have them because when the cutoff date hit, when you couldn't put in any more, they hadn't had a salesperson approach them, or they didn't know about them. And so I was, in fact, talking to an Elks Club not long ago up in the north part of the state who is waiting on pins and needles, because for many of these businesses, this was a lifeline for their survival, especially during COVID. Now, bear in mind, we as an industry supported limiting the number of machines at 4. We did not want more than 4 because we did not want our focus to be gaming. We wanted it still to be hospitality plus another option. Too much of anything is not a good thing. And so I'll just go through a couple quick points on this. Part of the reason we're looking at liquor licenses is we are age appropriate and age restricted establishments. Now, does that mean you have to be 21 or over? No, but we know who is 21 or over because we're trained. Some of you know Mr. Montoya and I. He and I have worked and coordinated a statewide education program that's trained over 40,000 people in Wyoming on responsible alcohol service. Part of that training is how to card people. And in many communities, in fact, all the larger ones, that's required. So we know what we're doing when we come to checking IDs. The difference between, and there's been some heartburn, and Senator Ellis rightly pointed out that there's been some heartburn about the expansion of gaming in Wyoming. And as it was pointed out by Director Moore, there has been no expansion in skill games. And when there is, you probably aren't going to notice it. Because we're inside location. We have those machines inside our locations. We don't have big signs that say, play your skill games here. We don't have blinking lights. It's part of the business, and you probably won't even notice they're there until you walk clear in the back. And so even when expansion occurs, as long as we have these sideboards in, nobody's going to really notice that they're there. Like I said, it's just part of a subdued part of the business itself. A lot of clubs use them similar to what they use with bingo and pull tabs. It's just a form of entertainment for our customers, and that's the primary focus. One of the problems with not putting sideboards is runaway. For example, in a downtown like this, you got an antique shop that is without sideboards who puts in 4 skill games. Well, the convenience store down the street's going, hey, Joe's doing pretty good with those games. And so before too long, you've got 20 or 30 locations down the main thoroughfare with these locations. Harder to enforce, and certainly they start cannibalizing off each other. And this way we have some control. The other thing, committee, and you well know this, is we all have licenses that are issued to us by the graces of the county and city. And they can decide not to renew them. We have a vested interest in making sure things go right. No underage drinking, no excessive alcohol use, and also making sure everybody plays those games are old enough. So that ties into that as well. Like I said, the numbers, originally I was saying maybe doubling the number of locations, but considering the initial applications we're looking at, it's even less than that. Bear in mind, we have about 1,400 liquor licensees in Wyoming. There's a lot of them that don't want them. Whether you're a chain, whether you're a packaged liquor store, whether you just don't consider it appropriate. If you're a nice restaurant, having machines going ding, ding, ding in the corner is probably not something you want. So I don't think you'll probably see more than about half of them out of that total. And in that total is also included manufacturers, malt beverage permits like fishing tackle shops. So if we end up with half of those licensees with skill games, I would consider that pretty high. So we're not talking about an explosion here with these sideboards. So that being said, committee, we really encourage you to do this. Part of it is, like I said, I represent an industry when if we get too many of us, bad things can happen that reflect back on all of us. And these sideboards are vitally needed to make sure that these machines, when the expansion occurs, and we thank you for the consideration of doing this, that those machines will be in regulated environments with people who know how to handle it. So with that, committee, I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions? Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mosier, on page 2, I think I got these all not noted down, but I want to make sure I've got it right. So starting on line 4, you start listing all the different types of liquor licenses available. Is it first a tasting room, then retail, special club, resort, restaurant, bar and grill, winery, and microbrew? Does that sound about right? Are there any liquor licenses that are not on this list?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, I don't believe county malt beverages are on those, and that's one of them, but most of the liquor licenses are included. You're probably talking with the list you mentioned about 1,300 of the 1,400.
Follow up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We heard from the commission that there hasn't been any new machines, skill-based amusement machines coming online in these establishments. Do you have any information if there have been more approved historic horse racing machines that are also coming online in these establishments?
Mr. Moser?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, historic horse racing has been buying up a number of liquor licenses, including long-established places, and turning them into HHRs. Also, there have been, in one location I know of, the experimentation of mini sites, where they just have a small number of HHRs and they go inside an existing business. So that's been happening. And part of it is because if you are a bar and you can't get skill games, it's like, well, I need something. I want something. And so with this bill passing with the sideboards, I think you might be able to scale back a little bit on that concept, because I think most places would rather have skill games because they're easier to set up. And so that, I hope that answers your question, Senator Ellis.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And a follow-up question to it. So you mentioned you don't want too many of these games because they start to cannibalize, but that's, I think, my concern is we have sideboards on the skill machines to 4 per establishment, no more, but there's no reciprocal requirement for HHR machines. So in theory, you could have an establishment or a bar with 4 skill games, but maybe 6. I don't know how the HHR works, but 6, 10, I don't know how that works. So that's, how do you share that concern then about the cannibalization when it comes to kind of mixing these 2 machines together?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, normally I would consider HHR and skill games operating under a completely different customer base, because people playing HHR come in to play HHR. People that play skill games come into your bar or restaurant and play them while they're there. There's not I don't know of any coexistence in any establishment, so I really can't state that. But I don't think most operators would want that many machines, because once again, that would make it so you're becoming a gaming establishment rather than a hospitality establishment.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Jones?
Madam Chair, can you explain how the revenue is generated from the skills games for Wyoming, and what kind of amounts we can expect from this expansion?
Madam Chairman, Senator Jones, I know what I don't know, and I proudly proclaim the things there would be other people more qualified to state that. And so I would lean on some of the skill games people or Director Moore. I just represent the bars. I just know they help. I'm just a simple country lobbyist.
Any follow-up? You good? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead,
So,
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just so I understand this, these mini sites that the commission is authorizing, those don't include bars, or they do include bars?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, my understanding is that they are in bars.
Okay, so there could be some of your members of your association that have 4, maybe up to 4 skill machines and HHR machines.
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, they probably could, but I don't know of anybody that does it or would want it. Because once again, and there is some discretion, I think, involved with the city itself. I mean, municipalities and counties can do zoning and say no more than X number of machines, whatever kind of machines they are. And we actually encourage that, so the municipality has some degree of control. So you can say HHRs can do this, but if you're a liquor licensee, 4 games. And so you could rein that in that way. But that being said, I don't think the proliferation, once the sideboards come on and the expansion goes up, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of that, because licensees will have another choice.
Madam Chair,
go ahead.
One last
Oh,
question.
sure.
So if we were to, because what I'm seeing in my community are a lot of HHR machines coming online. a lot, and I hear a lot about it. So my concern is that these establishments will also become additional mini casinos within Cheyenne. And so I'm curious to know if your group would support, within the definition of these skill-based amusement games, a limit that says they shall only allow for skill-based amusement machines up to 4. That way there's a prohibition on adding HHR machines. I'm curious to know what your thoughts would be on that.
Wow. Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, I would need to think that through to make sure, but we're just asking for 4 skill games. And so the mini sites are there's not very many. I understand it's just in one town in the middle of the state. So if you do want to restrict those, that's a little beyond my purview, but I can see why you do that to prevent exactly what you're talking about.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, follow up, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is why I'm asking you. These are your members in your industry. So, you said that they want the skill machines. So I'm trying to ask if they want the HHR machines. And if they don't, because of that cannibalization, to me, when I play these games or look at them, I'm not a gambler. I don't like playing them, but I've looked at them. They're not so dissimilar in that they're activities that people play when they go to a bar. So I'm just a little concerned about the growth of gaming. It's exploded, not so much on the skill side, clearly, but definitely on the other. So that's the question I have for you is, do you share that concern?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, anytime we have too much gaming, it's a concern. In other words, 4 games to me is fine because it's an aspect of the business. I would leave that as a policy decision to you all. I haven't gone to my board about this because it really isn't a widespread issue at this juncture because they're just in a few sites. And so I don't know if it's economically feasible to even do it. So I don't really see it as an imminent problem. It could be one of those things like with our liquor license bill that you guys will soon see where we agreed this will be an evolving issue and we're going to have to reapproach it to see if this is becoming a problem. So I don't know if this would be legislation we would need now or see if that becomes an issue. I don't think it probably will because I don't know if anybody that wants more than 4 of anything. Because it changes the complexion of your establishment. And you're not going to compete with an HHR facility with 120 machines. Like I said, HHR usually draws a customer that wants to play gaming. We attract customers that want to be in our establishment, that want to do something fun on the side.
Any other questions, Mr. Moser? Okay, thank
Thank
you
you,
so
committee.
much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else want to provide testimony today? Welcome and introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Sorry, members of the committee, Catherine Wilkinson here today on behalf of Cowboy Skill and Pacematic, joined by Jonathan Downing and Ryan Clement.
Yeah, Ryan Clement here, representing Patriot Games and Smoker Friendly.
Madam Chairman and members of the committee, we are here today to ask you to stand in support of Senate File 41. We have been asking for location restrictions of these games since day one of bringing skill games into the state of Wyoming. We do believe that there are appropriate locations for these games. They should be in 21 and up areas. As you know, there is a disparity between the other forms of gaming as age 18 skill. The legislature chose to be 21, and we are fine with that, but we do think that they should be in locations that are restricted to entertainment for those 21 and up. So that falls in the liquor license category and the truck stop category. Madam Chairman, we do have some more information too on the truck stops with the questions that were raised. Let me see if I could answer a few more of the questions that were also raised. With regard to the convenience store question, Pacematic does operate skill games in other jurisdictions and convenience stores. We represent 8 separate operators that are vendors around the state that were competing vendors. So their traditional business are pool tables, dart boards, jukeboxes. They brought in the skill games. Those are the folks that are running the skill games for us. In other jurisdictions, they do operate in convenience stores. And the reason is their convenience stores in other states are a little different than they are in Wyoming. Most of them sell alcohol They're kind of a different feel than, what we would think of as a traditional gas station. So the truck stops, was very deliberate in terms of making sure that a lot of them do have the trucker lounge areas, not designated specifically for the age 21 and up, but they are more age restricted areas. So that is why we do support that. One of the other questions that had come up was the revenue expected. So our locations are there to supplement small businesses. They're never meant to be an end destination entertainment. They're always meant as supplemental to whatever that business is operating, usually a bar, VFW, truck stop. So we have contracts with the locations that have splits that part of the revenue does go to the location and part to the vendors. Also included in those contracts, at least for Paysomatic, are contracts of exclusivity. So in regard to having 4 HHRs on top of the 4 skill games, at least in our establishments, that would never happen because it would be in violation of the contract. I cannot speak to other operators, manufacturers in the state, but I don't think that we would be opposed to an idea of if it was only 4 skill games. We are all about competition, and we're all about the contracting side of it between the 2 businesses where they can negotiate it. But we would never have a co-location, at least with our operators. Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chairman, I would turn it over to Mr. Downing for some more information on the truck stops.
Go ahead, Mr. Downing.
Good morning, members of the committee. Jonathan Downing on behalf of Cowboy Skill and Paysomatic. I also represent Colorado Wyoming Petroleum Marketers Association. Normally it's on transportation issues and environmental regulations. And so to follow up on the questions regarding the 50,000 gallons that had come up during joint revenue earlier during the interim. Historically, most of the skill games in Wyoming have been spread out along the I-80 corridor as far as when you're talking truck stops, and some along I-25 and some of those other trucker types of centers. When the definitions had come up, there had been discussion of what's the normal amount of gallons per month that you might see consumed at a truck stop. And the numbers that had been on the table during that committee meeting, while they were looking to try and get an amendment, and it had been a long day for everybody, average, without getting into super privileged or anything like that, a lot of your I-80 truck stops will normally have around 100,000. You can see 75,000 for some of the smaller ones, but they had arrived at 50,000 during that committee meeting. With the petroleum marketers, when you had a lot of the traffic during 2020, when a lot of things were shut down, this was providing an entertainment service for some of those folks. It was also providing supplemental revenue at a time when there wasn't as much revenue and a lot of traffic going through. And so the main piece, taking that hat off now and going back more to the Paysomatic side, is that we obviously are supportive of ensuring that it's 21 and over, as we've advocated since the beginning. While there are other industries that operate in the gaming or gambling space in Wyoming that can be 18 and up, we had advocated for 21 and up. And so are there any questions on truck stops right now?
Questions, committee? Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've expressed this concern to you before. I just feel like 50,000 gallons is a really weird metric to be measuring. So I'm curious what you would think if we were to strike some of that language about the 50,000 gallons and just said a truck stop means a business premise that it's equipped with diesel islands used for fueling commercial vehicles, striking the rest of that, and includes a convenience store with an designated age-restricted area and parking spaces dedicated for commercial vehicle use. I think my concern, Madam Chair, is that 2 acres, what if you have a parcel that's 1.95 acre? What if you have a truck stop that's at 45,000 gallons a month, the average? I think those are difficult to, I just worry about us fencing people out. Like, if we're going to do this fairly, we should do it fairly. Along those lines, I'd also be curious if we were to limit this to I-25 and I-80 locations along I-80 and I-25, if that would exclude any current or would require any operator shutdown if we limited it to those two major interstates.
Mr. Downing?
Madam Chair, thank you, Senator. I'll go back to our members and just get a feel from them. I think that there's just on the face of it, that there's some areas that they could probably agree to on that. In addition to that, you also have I-90, which I was remiss in mentioning. But we definitely could take a look at that as far as what that number is. With respect to Pace-O-Matic and Cowboy Skill, they had chosen not to go into the convenience store space, partly because of some of the thoughts of local community leaders back then, as far as some of those communities that they were operating and moving into. As far as some of the other competitors, I would leave that to them as far as their comments, because we are supportive of competition. We also realize that for our particular product, that some places you don't want to have them, but that's why we'd also push for the 21 and over requirements since the beginning.
Oliver?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my concern isn't so much with the truck stops per se. It's what's happening inside the area. There is one place along I-80 where I stop to get gas, and there are two skill machines tucked in a corner on your way to the restroom where there's no one monitoring it. I don't see any cameras. And so in the liquor establishments, I do think that there is a culture of making sure and monitoring that you don't have underage people in certain areas drinking alcohol, playing the machines, like that's part of that culture. In truck stops, I do get very nervous when I walk in and there's no one monitoring machines. So that's what I'm trying to get after. I'm less worried about the size of the truck stop as I am, whether or not the convenience store or cashier has the ability to even see or monitor. And so this definition doesn't get me closer to feeling better about making sure that those machines are being monitored for play along those lines. So, Mr. Downing, if you could give us some direction, but I'm leaning toward that should be the focus, is making sure that these are being monitored, these areas. Any thoughts?
Madam Chair, we agree and are very open to what that might look like. I don't want to put the Gaming Commission on the spot again, but in some of the proposed rules that have been discussed with industry over the last couple of years, one of the proposals had been for what is called I'll just say more of like a half wall, but that way you have some degree of physical separation. The liquor industry had also talked about, similar to how you have restrictions on dispensing rooms versus that more general area within when you have like a bar and grill license, of having that area defined more clearly. And for our folks, clarity is appreciated, and I think it's very important when you're trying to designate those areas.
Thank you. Other questions for the committee? From the committee? No? Okay.
I'd just like to say something on behalf of Patriot Games and Smoker Friendlies. We're in support of this bill. The grandfather clause, as when you guys asked the director more about that, Madam Chairwoman, basically the grandfather clause are the smoke shops that I represent, eight of those locations, and the other 2 locations was a laundromat or something else. Smoke shops in this state are more restrictive than liquor license holders as far as where you can go on the premises. Most of those doors say 21 and up, you don't enter without ID. Most of our locations have cameras, and so we're in support of that 21 and up scenario. So the bottom line is, it would be very nice for us to be able to identify our shops as a carve-out, but under the circumstances, we support the bill.
Thank you. Questions?
Miss-
Senator Ellis?
Mr. Clement, I think you're missing from the definition of what an establishment is on page 2, lines 1 through 5. Would you be supportive of an amendment that clarifies that smoke shops also constitute an establishment?
Madam Chairman, Senator Ellis, yes, ma'am.
Follow up, Madam Chair?
Yes.
So if we were to do that, Mr. Clement, then paragraph E becomes less important to you.
Absolutely.
Other question? Oh, Mr. Downing, go ahead.
Madam Chair, also on behalf of Petroleum Marketers Association, we're in addition to Pace-O-Matic, we're supportive of adding smoke shops. Smoke shops or nicotine operations have a requirement 21 and over for their business anyway. believe that you already have some businesses that are operating in there and would not want to see them harmed after they had gone through the process of coming in like they had since the creation. I may have missed one other question from this side of the room earlier. With skill-based amusement games, we do appreciate the work the legislature has done as this industry has evolved since before 2020, but also when our client had came in and said it's not often that you have companies asking for regulation, and we're clearly not always saying, hey, let's grow government or have more regulation. But for certain things in certain industries, we believe it's important. And that's why you have members of the industry saying, we would like to have that regulation. We also believe that regulation is better than prohibition, particularly because not only do you have the 20% taxes that are collected on the games, but also because of ensuring that you have a mechanism that provides local law enforcement with the ability to go out and say, this is a game that is authorized by the state of Wyoming across all of the space that the Gaming Commission covers. And so when you're looking at crafting and standing up those industries, as well as those policy questions that were asked in 20 through some of those special sessions and before then, what you now see is more clarity in those areas. And so with that respect, we do know that there are some areas that they're asking for as far as within appropriations. We've been on record of wanting to ensure they have the resources available to ensure that they can enforce the existing law. On top of that, Pace-O-Matic also has a compliance officer who is a former director of Wyoming Homeland Security that goes out and checks machines, checks contracts, makes sure that folks are complying with what's required there as far as a state statute. That's in addition to what the Gaming Commission already does. On top of it, we also have a former county commissioner behind me that also works with local governments to ensure that if there's concerns at a local government level, that those concerns are addressed. And so as far as being a responsible corporate citizen, that is our commitment to the state. That's also the commitment to ensuring that we have a revenue source that goes to cities, towns, and counties, and also to local school districts. And with that, if there's more questions, we're always available. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. No other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. Anybody else who would like to testify on this bill? Morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Byron Odikoven, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. And joining me today is Terry Armitage, retired Deputy Attorney General, who's assisted us in a number of our legislative activities and reviews. So with that, Madam Chair, I have a few random thoughts, if you will.
Betcha.
Not sure they'll be in quite order, so to speak, but at least a couple things concerning the bill in general and a couple other points for consideration as we work through. You know, the skill games has been a troubling topic for us in the beginning because they were operating outside what was believed to be statutory construct and needed to be grandfathered in some legal manner. And then we've had a change, if you will, from the Parimutuel Commission to a Gaming Commission proceeding to offer a degree of oversight to gambling activities throughout. And one of I remember in the early discussions of creating that statute for skill-based games, a whole discussion of truck stops and a whole discussion of whether the long-term goal was to have the Wyoming geographic view, if you will, look like Montana, where there were facilities and gaming operations pretty widespread and scattered throughout the state. And of course, there was assurances at that point that the answer was no. And here we are adding to the second component, and probably the final component, if you will, of adding truck stops to the mix, which is pretty much what you see in other states. I bring that up not as a negative, but as a point of reference that, again, early in our discussion, we talked about supervision. We talked about management. We talked about the Gaming Commission have authority to do. And we looked too, and we talked about Montana's Gaming Commission and the review and supervision they exercise over those machines in the state, and the sheer number of employees, the size of their gaming commission, the amount of supervision that they do. Wyoming's taken a much different approach to that. It's a very much described as an on your honor system for gambling. There is no intertie to the machines. There is no check, so to speak, in a serious context as it relates to other states that do gambling when it comes to the review of the machines. It's an on your honor. It's a form you fill out. This is what I took in this month. Therefore, this is what I owe you in taxes, and this is where we are. That does not happen in other states, generally. They have a much more robust system to ensure that all folks are playing within the proper construct of the statute. So I would suggest, once again, we've never taken the position of being for or against gambling. We've maintained that if you're going to do it well. Be robust in your supervision, be robust in your enforcement to ensure compliance. I'm not saying we have bad actors now, but you only have to look to other states to see historically what's happened in court cases where sooner or later there is a bad actor. And do we have the proper statute? Do we have the proper leverage, if you will, with the Gaming Commission and supervision to determine and to find those bad actors, root them out, to ensure that the gaming operation for our citizens is above board and well within the statute. So I'm cautious, nervous, and concerned in that area to ensure that we do. We've asked Director Moore several times, do you have enough employees? Do you have enough skill set within to look at with a degree of concern, because the approval process that has been mentioned, I want to reaffirm to the committee, as my understanding, is a picture from an enforcement officer of the machine in the bar, which then leads to a stamp that is sent to the bar, put on the machine, and a second picture taken. It does not call for a individual review by an officer per se. Now, granted, the enforcement officers have been to many of the establishments and looked at many of the machines. I'm just saying that level of enforcement does not happen in other states. That is not how machines are placed and put, so to speak. So I would suggest that the Gaming Commission needs to receive additional support from the legislature to ensure that the gaming public receives a fair shake in their gambling opportunities. We've had a couple of other points. I'm somewhat intrigued in the truck stop discussion of being a 21 truck stop. I've never seen a 21 and over truck stop. So granted, they cater to somewhat an older population thinking about CDL drivers. Granted, I get that, but I'm not aware of 21 and over. So that's kind of an interesting play on terms as it may fit this discussion. In terms of the HHR machines, the historic horse racing machines, those machines are tied together. They are where you can go online, review, and see what is. It is a system where there is direct accountability directly to the Gaming Commission. They can see exactly where the plays are made, what plays are being done, the money in and the money out, Madam Chairs. That does not happen with the skill-based. Again, that's an honor system, if you will, as it goes. Third, there was a point on local control. Earlier this year, there was a discussion in one of the committees on having local control. That bill died for lack of a second. And I'm not sure what the course of discussion is that basically makes these machines mandatory in a community if a bar enters into a contract with the company to have them. So that's an interesting dynamic as well. We talk about local control on HHR machines, but local control does not necessarily exist. Now, granted, in the long term, renewal of liquor licenses does carry some of those discussions, but not specifically to skill-based or other gambling opportunities. Finally, I would suggest that it doesn't take very long with Google looking through the internet to see what other states think about quote skill or gray games, as they're referred to in many other states, referred to as skill games in Wyoming because our statute construct describes and uses the word skill. In other states, the very same machine is described as a gray game because that's the statutory construct that describes those in there. So it doesn't take very long to look through the statutes to see that other states are in fact outlawing or cracking down or offering more supervision or calling into question some of the practices of the machines. Fortunately, we haven't seen some of those questionable activities here, but I'm guessing if it's happening there, sooner or later it may happen here. And again, I would ask that the Gaming Commission be supported to have those additional personnel with a skill set to be able to ferret that out. In terms of local complaints, we feel woefully inadequate. We haven't received training or understanding on the machines to understand how fraud could take place and how to investigate that fraud if it were to be in place. So it's a very hands-off, if you will. We rely on the state to do that and hope that they, again, have the number of personnel and the budget to be able to do that. Madam Chair, that's several different random thoughts, as I warned you in the beginning. So please, I turn to Mr. Armitage if he has any additional comments and further questions from you.
Mr. Armitage?
Thank you. I'm Terry Armitage. A few additional thoughts I've got. I worked for the Attorney General's office starting clear back in 1986. I represented the Parimutuel Commission back when gambling was a whole lot simpler in Wyoming, much simpler. I watched the historic racing machines come into use, the off-track betting come into use. And what I realized was the United States Supreme Court has said that gambling needs to be closely regulated. Wyoming Supreme Court said that. It takes more oversight and more regulation than a lot of other industries. And I think we need to get up to speed or make sure we are in Wyoming. Because if we once again expand gambling, I think we need to make sure our new gaming commission, and thank goodness we have a commission now, has the resources and the manpower to fully and adequately supervise this. In my experience, where there's gambling, there's a chance of corruption. How about that? I'm not saying it always happens, but nationwide, it happens a lot in a lot of different ways. So the more we can do to keep control over this and closely regulate it, the better off Wyoming's going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Otakoven or Mr. Armitage? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Madam
Sarah
Chair.
Ellis.
Just one comment on the local control question. I think, one distinction I certainly make is that these skill machines, I think the way that the legislature's contemplated and the way they're come to thought to be are bar games that are supplementary to, like, the primary activity of a bar is to sell alcohol. These are just entertainment pieces versus the HHR world where we see now fully mini casinos popping up everywhere. So I think that the local control aspect of it might be distinguishable on that front, at least in my opinion.
Any comments on that? Mr. Armitage? No? Okay. All right. Thank you. Guess if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and thank you, gentlemen, and ask anybody else that would like to testify to come on up.
Chairman Director Moore has his hand raised.
Okay. Let's go ahead and let him, he may have a couple of questions or answers to those questions, so go ahead. Go ahead, Director Moore.
Thank you very much. Again, Director Moore of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. One thing I'd like to touch on briefly. 5 years ago, I believe, and consistently, I have asked committees to review gaming in the larger picture in the state of Wyoming. And I appreciate everything that you all are doing. So, we are concerned with expansion. We're concerned with expansion on all fronts of gaming here. To speak to one of your earlier questions, I believe with law enforcement, Chairman Schuler, we are not seeing any issues from our local partners around the state. Also, to follow up briefly on a few things that Mr. Otakoven had mentioned, we offer training to all jurisdictions throughout the state. We have reached out to multiple law enforcement agencies throughout the state offering training. We will come to the locations. We'll travel wherever we need to do it, either via Zoom or again, traveling in person to help our local law enforcement with enforcement on these issues. And we do work with quite a few. We're working here locally on several different cases. As far as earlier, there was a question regarding the splits with skill-based amusement games. It's a 20% tax with a 45% going to the city and county, 45% going to the school facilities, and then 10% going to the commission. Mr. Laramendi has those 2022 figures for you if you'd like to hear those.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in 2022, based on, or on the skill-based amusements, the school foundation fund received roughly $1.8 million. The counties around the state received roughly $1 million. Cities and towns received roughly $868,000. And the Gaming Commission received $416,000 for operational costs. And also one other thing that I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Odekoven had said with the connectivity with the historic horse racing to a central monitoring system. The commission is currently working on an RFP to send out for a central monitoring system for the skill-based amusement games, so we can look at getting those all connected and have that real-time reporting. That really helps with, the taxation part and any consumer complaints that, I was playing this game at this time and I put this much money in it. A lot of those monitoring systems track every dollar in and every dollar out, and it really helps on the compliance side and settling disputes and complaints as well.
Speaking about the review.
Appreciate it. Anything else, Director Moore?
Madam Chair, one other thing that almost spaced my mind. So Mr. Odekoven had also talked about the approval process and a picture and sending the stickers to the bars. In 2020, when this bill first passed, that was done a lot. We had done a lot of this via Zoom and meeting the operators or vendors via Zoom. That was mainly due because of COVID, and a lot of these bars were shut down right after the passage of this bill. Moving forward, though, we will be having agents going out, verifying locations and compliance with the new rules that will be promulgated to make sure that everything fits before, and then the agents and people from our office will physically sticker these machines. They won't be going out in the mail and just put this on the machine for us and then let us know that it's on there. We'll be doing that on our own now that we have some room to work with.
Thank you very much for that testimony. Any questions? Senator Ellis?
Madam Chair, follow up. Did you happen to find some numbers about HHR machines? This is what I hear about in my community the most.
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, I will get all of those to you. You wanted 2021 growth from 2021 to now. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, follow up. How about let's go to 2020 to today?
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, I will break that down 2020, 2021, 2022, and anything that may be on the horizon. I'll get that sent to you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. I think we still have one more person in the room that would like to testify. Welcome. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Nick Agopian. I represent Bankshot Skills Games here in Wyoming. Bankshot, I believe, to the best of my knowledge, has those other two locations that would be grandfathered in under Section E that Senator Ellis has identified. One of those is a laundromat. I believe the other is potentially a C-store. The locations, I'm not certain exactly where they are. But I think what we've heard directly from the commission is there are no associated issues, no complaints filed against those locations, at least to the best of my knowledge. And I would certainly stand to be corrected if that was the case. So we stand in opposition to this bill. I've brought that opposition forward during the interim. I think Senator Baldwin and Chairwoman Schuler recall that. The odds clearly are stacked against me in terms of who's supporting it. But I think the testimony we've heard today is all about what if, what might, what's going on in other states, when what's happening on the ground here is we have a robust commission that has law enforcement ability. there haven't been complaints filed about these locations. It is clear and it's illegal for individuals to put money in these machines and play these games if they're under the age of 21. It is illegal for an operator, the owner of the location where the machine is, to allow for that to occur. And it impacts their ability to operate if it's found that they are allowing that to happen. In the rules today that are in the final process of being signed, and I believe headed towards Governor Gordon's desk for signature, is specific language that creates and requires a half wall to be constructed and further places the burden on the operator of the location to manage and monitor. It does not, as Senator Ellis, I don't believe, require any sort of video monitoring of that sort. I don't know every location. I don't know why we would be opposed to that if that was something that was necessary. But again, we're talking about the what ifs, when in reality, what is not a what if, what is certain is we just saw the tax revenue that's being generated. We're on the front end of an industry that is growing. The industry as a whole, the gaming industry or the skill with HHR and with skills is growing, one faster than the other, one without sideboards and now one potentially with, and that is concerning. We would appreciate that keeping Section E in place for our 2 locations. That was our understanding going through the interim. But against our total locations, it's hard to say that it's a huge percentage. I wouldn't want to suggest that and play that up. But at the end of the day, we aren't seeing these problems. And the biggest issue that we see at the end of the day is with this bill, the state is now defining who our customer is. It's somebody that drinks, somebody that smokes, and it's somebody that drives a truck. And I don't understand why we would do that. 21 and older is what was identified initially, and we are not having those problems. To the questions raised by law enforcement about the what ifs, fraud, misuse, all of those things, again, it's what ifs. We haven't seen those sorts of things. My company that I represent is on record supporting the state putting in place a central management system that provides that live reporting, that gives the commission the opportunity to see live what's going on at those games. And we think that that's a great thing to have. It is the thing that ensures that the state, the counties, the cities, and the school children get their fair share of the revenue. And we believe that that's we believe it's forthcoming, as we've heard from Director Moore and from Mr. Special Agent Laramendi. They're preparing an RFP. We're waiting for that. We're confident that our software can connect and provide the state that look. With that, I'd stand for any questions and again, ask for a no vote on this bill.
Questions for Mr. Agopian? I don't see any. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Oh, hang on. Senator Ellis.
Madam Chair, I'm sympathetic to the moving this bill forward with E that would grandfather in the 2 locations, either the hotel or C-store or in the laundromat. But do you have a response to my concern of the laundromat? The monitoring that occurs there, my experience with the laundromats is those aren't manned 100% of the time. There's just opportunity for tampering with the machine. So that's my concern is, Wyoming never got to pick where these machines were located when they entered the state. The industry did. They put them where they wanted. And then we built our statutory framework around that. And I don't think that wasn't a good practice. So I think going forward, it would be nice for Wyoming to pick where we want things. And that's, I guess, my concern. So if you can push back on that a little bit, I'm all ears. But going forward, I think Wyoming legislators should be picking where we want these machines if we want to have them at all.
Mr. Agopian?
Madam Chairwoman, Senator Ellis, I don't know that I want to push back too hard on you in that regard. For an establishment to have the ability to decide what they think is profitable in their own business, I think it is really where I'm going. If it's not appropriate for it to be in there, there would be complaints that would be coming to the commission. There's a process that's in place to provide those. And ultimately, if there is not a customer base for that sort of location, it's going to go away because it just isn't profitable to have it on the route. I spoke with a location here in Cheyenne that does have a brewery license and was asking them if they've considered this. And they said, that's not what we want to provide to our customer. And they have that ability to make that decision. For those places outside of liquor licenses or bars, I believe that they should have that opportunity. Or frankly, I would even consider that would be where local control would come in and give the locals the opportunity to approve those locations. But as we've heard before, these are designed to be an add-on to existing businesses as a revenue generating opportunity. And it's up to that business to decide if this is going to be a positive for their clientele or not. With this bill, it would limit the number of businesses that would have that opportunity to make that consideration.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Looks like that should take care of it. Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Agopian. I didn't see anybody else, so I think we'll go ahead, unless I see a hand. No? Okay. We'll go ahead and close testimony for the public, and so, yes, we do need a motion. Motion's been moved by Senator Ellis. Let's take a look at page 1. Any issues there or possible amendments? Page 1, page 2. Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move that on page 2, line 2, after the word truck stop, insert the word smoke shop. And then on line 20, insert a new definition paragraph. I think it would be little x, little I, little I. And it would say, smoke shop means a retailer as defined by Wyoming statute 14-3-301 A Romanet 3 that derives 50% or more of its gross annual revenue from nicotine products as defined by Wyoming statute 14-3-301 A Romanet 6.
Doreen, did you have to get all that? We can go ahead and,
We can go over it too afterwards.
sure. Yep,
Madam Chair, so I have a few amendments, but that one I'd like to take on its own
okay.
or have a discussion on that motion.
Yep, discussion on the amendment. Discussion? I don't have any questions on it either, so. Let's make, you want to just make that a separate motion? Okay, let's go ahead and vote on that motion, that amendment. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that amendment is passed. I feel you have something else coming down the pike.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move that on page 2, line 11, after the word vehicles, strike the remainder of the sentence, strike of all of 12, all of 13. On line 14, strike the word sales. And then going on to line 16, strike the first part of that sentence, located, the whole sentence actually, located on the parcel of land not less than all of 17. On line 18, the word business and which. Then on line 18, after the word with, insert the words a designated age-restricted area and. So this, Madam Chair, would mean, the definition of a truck stop would mean a business premise that is equipped with diesel islands used for fueling commercial motor vehicles and includes a convenience store with a designated age-restricted area and and parking spaces dedicated to commercial motor vehicle use. That would be the new definition.
Did you get most of that, Doreen? All right, good. Let's go ahead and have some discussion on that amendment. Any discussion? I actually think that's a good amendment. I remember in the Revenue Committee, we had quite a bit of discussion about how many thousands of gallons and the size of the parcel, and I honestly felt like it just kind of muddied the bill. So I'm definitely in support of that. So let's go ahead and take a vote on that amendment. Unless there's questions, comments. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, that amendment's passed also. Anything else on page 2? Anyone?
No.
No? Okay, how about page 3?
Madam
Senator
Chair,
Ellis?
I move on page 3, lines 13 through 19, strike the new paragraph E. and I don't feel so strongly, so if committee wants to have some discussion about this, this would eliminate 2 of the existing locations, one at possibly the hotel or C-store and one at the laundromat. I'm sensitive to what that might do to the business, but I also feel like, again, we have written statutes around machines that were placed without our input at all. And at some point, the legislature should make some policy decisions on where we want those or where we feel comfortable having them. So I offer that for discussion. I don't feel so strongly about this, but did want to hear some feedback from my colleagues.
Okay, discussion. Senator Baldwin?
I'd be in, excuse me, Madam Chairman, I will be a no vote on that. I agree that we need to regulate it, but my feeling is that probably those 2 businesses will eventually play out over time. And if we keep that grandfather clause in now, eventually they're going to disappear anyway. Who knows when that is, but I'd be a no vote. I would encourage just leaving that in.
Discussion?
Madam Chair, withdraw the amendment.
Okay, withdrawn then. All right, that makes it easy. Anything else? All right.
Madam Chair,
Oh, go ahead, Senator Jones.
would it be appropriate to put some language in there that says that these machines do need to be placed on a central monitoring system?
We could, however, it sent to me, I think it sounds like it's coming down the pike anyway. So I think we'd be all right to just leave it out, but I appreciate that. I think that's a good concern, so. Anything else? All right. We're ready. I think we'll go ahead and take.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I've thought a lot about this bill since I saw it pop up. I just want to make it clear that I feel comfortable with it moving forward with a little bit more, with better definitions that provide greater flexibility and the inclusion of the smoke shops because they are age restricted. I will say if those amendments don't pass on committee of the whole or in subsequent amendments, that I wouldn't support this bill as it's currently written.
Any other comments on the bill? Okay, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote then on Senate File 41.
Thank you. Senate File 41, Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Ellis.
Aye.
Senator Garou has chosen aye. Senator Jones. And Chairman Schuler.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes.
I advise that bill is passed. Thank you for all the testimony. Thank you for those good amendments. And let's move on now.
Madam Chair, it's passed as amended.
Thank you.
And who would present this on the floor?
Anybody? Any takers?
Sorry.
I'll do it
Thank you.
if no one else does. I'm happy to. I think Senator Baldwin's voice will be gone, so I can't really lean on him much.
Nobody will know what I say.
All right, let's move on. Senate File 122, non-resident workers, vehicle registration extension. Really happy to be able to squeeze this bill in, and I apologize to those that are waiting for Senate File 106 for making the change, but this was a situation where we have an intern here who has been doing a great job for us up in the Senate. This was a bill that I think she can tell you a little more about, but I think it happened during her Girl State reign. And she asked for a little special dispensation because she's leaving tomorrow. So we're happy to see one of our young people come up and try and pass a bill. So we'll turn it over to Jessie Driscoll.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I want to thank you all for hearing my bill on such short notice. It really does mean a lot to me. This bill truly does mean a lot to me as I have been raised in tourism since I was little. So I'm working to help not only my community, but the state in opening our tourism just a little bit more. So this bill that I am proposing is already in effect, but I'm looking to change it from 120 days to 180 days. So this bill states that if our out-of-state work campers come into the state of Wyoming and are working for more than 120 days, they have to register their motorhomes and their vehicles through the state of Wyoming. To do so for those large motorhomes are in upwards of $3,000 to $5,000. They don't make that in a summer to make it feasible for them to come work for us. So I want to change it to 180 days to better suit our tourism season. So we won't have such a shortage of workers for our industry. With that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Jessie? Yeah, I have one. What kind of questions were you asked at Girl State when you brought this bill forward? Did they have any questions about the changes or anything like that?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Unfortunately, no, not really, just because it was one of those things that not very many people know about, and it's just kind of been flying under the radar. And so it was something that was addressed in my community that I wanted to help change, and I saw a way that I could do that. But unfortunately, none of the girls at Girls State were really educated in the Wyoming tourism or this kind of a problem, so they didn't really have any questions.
Other questions? Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you could just kind of walk us through your rationale, we go from 120 to 180, which is, 2 extra months, which 180 days is about 6 months. I'm just curious to know the rationale of why you went there. And is there any concern about residency and how, some states require, like, you have to be there, a resident, or your temporary snowbirds, they have to, just that kind of issue, like 6 months is kind of pushing it, like 6 months and a day, and maybe you're out of compliance for some residency things. I'm just curious why you picked that number.
Ms. Driscoll?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and Senator Ellis. So I chose 180 days because if you're out of the state of Wyoming for 181 days, you are no longer a Wyoming resident. So if you're going to be in the state of Wyoming for more than 180 days, you might as well be considered a Wyoming resident. And then it does also encompass our tourism season a little bit more. So it seemed like a double positive to me. I am more than open to changing the date if that is what you guys feel is necessary for our state, but that is why I chose 180 days. Thank you.
Other questions? I think it's, the guy next to you. Does he have any comments? This the President of the Senate, by chance? Who I might be related.
Very brief. Thank you, Chairman Schuler, committee. First, nice job for Jesse. These school bills are really important, and they do matter. This is one that's kind of fun, is it actually goes a little bit beyond tourism even. And so when we get into the oil field and into turnarounds at our power plants, real often these folks come in mobile homes in a camper type situation. And the law is very unevenly enforced across the state. A lot of counties just ignore it. You see a Texas plate on an oil field outfit, they just ignore it. Yet another county will enforce it. And this is a way that we don't make people into criminals that come into the state. It really lets them find a way to be legal, to be here and stay here. And I don't think any of us intend to force workers out of state when we're in a shortage of workers, when we've got a method to make it where it doesn't do it. It also encourages the locals to do it right because it brings the money back into the counties instead of feeding it to the state. So great job, great bill. Look forward to seeing her back down here on the House side on it. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Driscoll? Great job. Thank you so much. Oh, do you have one more comment? Sure.
I'd just like to point out also that I failed to mention that I did contact our local treasurer, or county treasurer, and we do have their support on that as well. So just so you guys are aware that they are in full support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear that. All right. What's your pleasure on this bill?
Any other comments?
Oh, sorry, we do have some public testimony. Come on up.
Madam Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County, 30 years active duty in the Navy. On a different vein, but directly related to what this substance this bill is, a military active duty member who has his vehicle titled and licensed in his domicile under the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act is not required to do anything like this, whatever state he may be in. The spouse is not protected unless the spouse is on active duty also. So a car that is either owned by the spouse or jointly owned in some states, not all of them do it this way, would require something like this. I've looked in statute. There's a exemption in there for driver's licenses, but not for vehicles that I found. If it's there, I missed it. I would apologize. So I would offer you that you may want to consider adding that in there, the Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act protection for the active duty member's vehicle titled in his state of domicile. Subject to your questions. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Winnie? Thank you very much. Any other testimony from the public on this bill? Morning. Well, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Lacey Bruckner, YDOT Compliance and Investigation. And we would like to just comment on this bill from YDOT's administrative perspective. This temporary worker registration decal has been in place since 2010. And while the county treasurers collect the fees for the temporary worker registration and they issue the decals, the department produces the decal and distributes it to the counties. And the department would just like to comment that with the changes to this bill, the current format of the decal is accommodating to that, and there would be no modifications to that decal going forward should this pass from our end. So I just would stand for any questions after that. Thank you.
Questions for YDOT? Senator Baldwin.
Hopefully you can hear my question. Oh, my voice is back. Just a question, for the law enforcement perspective, are those stickers all the same color? Do they all look alike? Or do, say, if somebody gets one in January, is it different from someone who gets one in July? Can they differentiate from a distance or short distance? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Senator Baldwin, they all look the same, and I do have some samples. If you'd like to see them, I could bring them up.
Yeah.
Is that okay? They are all the same color.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Senator Baldwin. They are all the same color. They have been this same color since their implementation in 2010. You can see the top row, they have a control number. The top row designates the month of expiration. The middle 3 rows represents the day of the month of the expiration, and the bottom row designates the year of expiration. So your county treasurer's offices, when they issue these, would just hole punch the respective month, day, and year in which this temporary worker decal would expire. And so they are placed on the upper left-hand corner of the windshield on a vehicle that has purchased registration for these. And so they are identifiable by law enforcement, to my knowledge. And you know, there are members in the room of law enforcement that may have more specific response to that question. So thank you.
Other questions? Senator Ellis?
Just a comment for the record, everyone, they gave us all expired permits. These are, mine expired in 2020, so you won't see this roaming around.
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, these are samples that our compliance and investigation program use for law enforcement training on the different types of temporary registrations that we have in the state. So I just grabbed some samples and surely wouldn't want current ones floating around. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Any other, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other testimony?
I don't want people thinking looting.
No, we don't want that. All right, you've heard the bill and the testimony. What's your pleasure on this bill? Okay, it's been moved by Senator Baldwin. Any discussion or comments or potential amendments?
Question.
Okay, question on the bill. Let's go ahead and call the roll call.
Senate File 122, Non-Resident Workers Vehicle Registration Extension. Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Ellis.
Aye.
Senator Guru has said aye. Senator Jones.
Aye.
And Chairman Schuler.
Aye.
We have 5 ayes.
Okay, the bill is passed.
Who
Great
would-
job. Give this girl a hand. I think she deserves a hand. Look forward to hearing how this goes through the introduction and to the readings, and I have a feeling it'll sail right through the Senate, but we'll see how the other side takes care of things. So, all right, we
Who
have
would
one more
you-
bill.
Madam Chair,
yes.
who would you like to present it?
Well, probably the president of the Senate if we can talk him into it. Well, for now, let's just say that President Driscoll will have him.
I will chat with him.
Okay, our next bill for consideration is Senate File 106, Large Project Funding. This was sponsored by the Select Natural Resource Funding Committee. And welcome, Mr. Budd. And we know this other senator quite well, but still go ahead and introduce yourself for the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Cooper, I'm here today representing the Select Natural Resource Funding Committee. And the bill before you today is Senate File 106. This is our annual bill that authorizes the Wyoming Wildlife Trust to distribute the funds from their trust fund for conservation, reclamation, habitat projects all across the state. This fund has been in business since, I believe, 2005. Is that correct? And it's done a lot of great work all across the state in every county. It has sponsored a number of conservation easements across the state, working with 37 families across 12 counties. They've distributed approximately $13 million over the last 17 years. The trust has a cap on their spending of $200,000 for small projects that they can move without legislative approval. Anything above that requires our approval for them to distribute their funds. One point is that this is the proceeds from the, I believe it's right at $200 million trust fund. And so it's not general funds money. It's not costing the state a dime. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Bob Budd from the Wyoming Wildlife Trust and have him go through these projects for us real quick.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Budd.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, realizing that there's time constraints, with your permission, I'll just work through the bill as opposed to the regular presentation. You all have that in hard copy. You can follow. They are concurrent, so the PowerPoint actually goes with the bill, but I think it'll expedite it if we just walk through the bill. Is that okay, Madam
We'll be
Chairman?
fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Senator Cooper said, this is money that comes out of the revenue from the trust account. There is not it says appropriation. You're simply allowing us to spend money that we're recommending. So that's important to reinforce that. There are 9 projects this year. That is a large number for us. It's over half of what we got in the fall. We had 14 applications. Over half of those were large projects. And there will be another bill coming to try and address that issue this afternoon. But if I can, I'll walk through these. The first one is in Teton County. It's a Teton migration. This is west, not south, but west of Jackson, Teton Pass. The primary species that is being impacted by vehicle collisions is moose, but it's also deer, elk, and potentially bighorn sheep. It's a massive project. When we originally had the bill drafted, the total cost was estimated to be $35 million and change. The actual bid went out, it's $59 million and change. But the portion which we are helping to pay for came down actually in that. So the underpasses actually came in at a lesser number. Important to recognize here that half of this funding is coming from a tax that was put on by the people of Teton County on themselves to do highway crossing work. So we've held that money for the county. This is a match to what they're putting up, and then there's an additional amount there. So as we work through, there are 3 amendments that I would suggest to this. Number 1 is on page 1. If I track under 2 little I, it should say west of Jackson instead of south. And then the amount in little IV should be 59. I'll give you that exact figure, 59,777,715. And in B, the $1 million should say provided by funding from Teton County, not private funding. There is private funding, but this is their county special tax. The second is the Fishhook Ranch Conservation Easement. This is south of Saratoga. It is on the North Platte River. It's one of the more spectacular pieces of property in southern Wyoming, has tremendous values for a variety of species, most notably sage grouse. There's a large lek right adjacent to the property on a state lease that this ranch holds. That means that there is a ton of nesting habitat adjacent. When we did this tour, it is prime nesting habitat. That also doubles as a mule deer migration route and as crucial winter range for mule deer. Anytime you look at this extent of the Platte River, you can imagine the riparian values. So as we were there that day, we had bald eagles, we had golden eagles, you have sandhill cranes, you've got all of the waterfowl species and all of the neotropical migrant songbirds. The bonus on this one is that last week we met with the Bureau of Land Management to deal with their mitigation funds from Rocky Mountain Power Line that went through, and they allocated $2 million to this project because it is such a significant sage grouse project. So we're picking up a very small piece of what this one is. The third is the Lakeview Canal Fish Passage. This is in Park County. They are currently in training as many as 51,000 fish per year in this canal. And it's just due to an age design. This would create a fish bypass, which would put those fish back into the river and not into the canal. Our portion, we're paying only for the fisheries part, the part that is the actual fish bypass. The remainder of the project is primarily funded by the Water Development Commission and the Irrigation District. So it will improve their irrigation efficiency, probably save quite a bit of water, and it will also save a whole lot of fish. The fourth is Wind River feral horse removal. As you recall, last year, you allocated significant funding to a partnership with the tribes up there to remove feral horses. That has become a real problem. Thousands of horses now extending into bighorn sheep summer range. They have several herds of bighorn sheep that are very robust, doing very well. That's one focus, but those horses are also impacting crucial mule deer winter range. They're impacting range for a variety of species, antelope season long, sage grouse, and others. This will essentially, with the private funding that they have and the match that is proposed here, this will pay for one more gather. This will match the funding that the legislature allocated last year. They're currently in the process of gathering horses, and this will expedite that. We hope that there's a federal funding source that would do the other two gathers, and we'd have this completed hopefully in 2023, possibly 24.
Madam Chair.
Can we ask a question, Mr. Budd? Go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just so I understand how this works, Director Budd, can you tell me a little bit more about the tribal cooperation piece and then what authorization you need from BLM to do this?
Madam Chair, the tribal cooperation, that's who we went and did the site visit with. They're working with the Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation. It's easier for them and for us to work with an intermediary just because of the way the accounting and other things work. Your money is split 50-50, the money that was allocated by the legislature last year. They just opened the bank account for that this week, as I understand it. So it's a great partnership with all three. The authority to do this rests with the tribes. It doesn't rest with anyone else. BLM is not involved because there are not BLM lands. So it is a private tribal endeavor that we are supporting.
Madam Chair, follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, I want to make sure I understand it. Is it Tribal Fish and Game that signs off, or do you have to have both the Intertribal Council sign off? I'm just curious how that works.
Madam Chair, Senator Ellis, we are working with Tribal Fish and Game as far as whether or not the Joint Tribal Council or each of the councils respond. Their role in this, my understanding is they're fully supportive and that they've turned that over to Tribal Fish and Game to be the manager.
Thank you. Continue.
Madam Chair, the next is SR Cattle Company Conservation Easement. This is in Sheridan County on 2,500 acres on Wolf Creek. I think most of you have probably been out to Wolf Creek right at the base of the Bighorns. It's absolutely stunning. It's also very vulnerable to residential development. This is the Kane family, a longtime family. Two of them have been presidents of the Wyoming Stock Growers. I worked for one of them, and his son just recently served as president. It is an ag operation, and they want to keep it as an agricultural operation. The wildlife values are significant, particularly for songbirds. When you get to that side of the Bighorns where they're coming up and down And that Wolf Creek with the riparian corridor is very, very important for that. But you also have wetlands and grasslands and intermediate shrubland ecotypes that are very important to deer, to antelope, to elk. And then one other species that is of concern, I guess, would be sharp-tailed grouse, and they're very, very abundant there, and maintaining that habitat is important as well. The next is Sims Creek Slough. This is on the Bear River in Uintah County. Madam Chair, you're very familiar with this. We've been working with the Uintah County Conservation District through Partners in Fish and Wildlife, which has a location there in Evanston, to get the Bear River, the passage for fish on the Bear River to the full length of it. The reason that's important, and both you and Senator Baldwin can recall this, is that there are constant attempts to list the Bonneville cutthroat trout as endangered. And one of the things that they've said in the past is they don't have access to their historic spawning range. We, by doing this, create that access for thousands of hundreds of tributary miles all throughout the Wyoming range and that part of the state. So the Bear River is it's the primary key place that those fish are going to go as mature fish. This is just one more step. We've hit a threshold where we need to now bring this as a large project, but we've been working down there for almost 10 years to continue to expand on the Bear. We will see more of these in the future as we just continue to work our way up and down the river. The next is the Little Medicine Bow River. This is one that came to us. It's about 25 miles of the river on the upper end. We have worked with landowners up there to stabilize all of the tributaries, a number of different activities, irrigation infrastructure improvement of the stream itself, and restructuring of the stream itself. Now we're into the main part of the river. This will tie into work that the Abandoned Mine Lands program has done on the old mine sites out there. And there will probably be one more phase of this, which will take it clear to the town of Medicine Bow. It is a complete watershed restoration. It's a phenomenal project. You get out there and the wildlife values are extreme. Again, sage grouse is a key part of that, but we also have antelope, mule deer. There are elk that come into the area. This ties in again to money that has been allocated by Rocky Mountain Power for mitigation. Both this project and the one north of it were chosen to be funded on that. So again, we're a small share of the funding that would go into those programs. The next is the Ellsbury Ranch Conservation Easement, 2,600 acres in Crook County. Mr. Ellsbury is here, and I want to be sure we leave time for him to talk, because I think it took him 9 hours to drive down through a blizzard. So I'd hope you'll get a chance to hear from him. But the Black Hills are a really, really phenomenal habitat in this state. They're kind of the melding of mountain, tall grass prairie, short grass prairie. All of that comes together in the Black Hills. This ranch has all of those values, everything from amphibians and reptiles to songbirds to turkeys to deer. A beautiful piece of property and a commitment by that family to keep it in agriculture and to maintain that wildlife habitat. The final is the New Fork 351. This is in Sublette County. This is again a seasonal movement for native fish. It is reconstruction of a head gate. Again, most of that money coming from other sources, the Water Development Commission. This pays for the portion on the fishery. It reestablishes and adds a significant amount of river that I think is pretty impressive. It's an old historic island that was used by people when they came across the Oregon Trail. That got cut off when the river chose to take a different route, primarily because of irrigation infrastructure. This will recreate that island and disperse that water on both sides. Madam Chair, I apologize for going so fast, but I know that you do have time constraints and certainly encourage your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions from the committee?
Madam Chair,
Yeah, Senator Cooper.
I'd like to just kind of add briefly, I consider this a jobs bill as much as anything. The revenue that this creates back into the state, the trust has gone out and they take these funds and they leverage them anywhere from 2 to 6 or 7 times, and then all that money comes right back into the state in jobs and in it's just a win-win for everybody. So these are great projects. Thank you.
Other comments from committee? Senator Baldwin?
Just a quick comment, and I'll make it into a question somehow. And that is, the key point of this, when I've dealt with this, when I was on this committee previously, is the input from the public. This provides an opportunity for any organization, the Elk Foundation, whoever, to put their money forward, to put their things forward, their concepts, along with the state of Wyoming, to benefit everybody. It benefits them, it benefits us, it benefits across the board. It's not something the state's just throwing money at and saying, here, we're gonna do this. This is something that everybody contributes to. We put it in a pot and have a worthwhile project. I've always supported these. Don't you agree?
Madam Chair, to answer Senator Baldwin's question, yes, we create leverage of about 6 to 1. For every dollar the state puts in, $6 comes from somewhere else. We have worked now with over 150 partner organizations, and it is a very interactive process. I encourage any of you to go on a site visit with us. Sometimes there will be upward of 30 people on one site visit, all people who are supporting it, from farmers, ranchers, to environmental advocates, to conservation groups, game and fish, county, weed and pest, county conservation districts. It is incredible to see how much camaraderie and support there is around these projects. So I appreciate that question, Senator.
Comments, Senator Ellis?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for the public comment, but maybe we can piggyback and coordinate a little on interim topics with your indulgence, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that would be great. Super. Now, what you guys do is amazing, and thank you last year for presenting to our interim group, because I learned so much, and I'm just in awe of all the things that you do. So appreciate your testimony and all that you do with the trust fund. It's amazing.
Thank you, Madam
Senator
Chair.
Cooper. Public testimony. I think we may have some.
Madam Chair, I also have 2 online that have
Okay.
just registered from
Okay.
SR Cattle Company.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, if you would. Welcome.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Jessica Crowder. I'm the Executive Director of the Wyoming Stock Growers Land Trust. And as you just heard from Senator Cooper and Director Budd, we do have 2 projects in this bill that we are asking your support for. I will keep my comments short because I think that both Director Budd and Senator Cooper covered our priorities very well. We do really appreciate the opportunity to work with agriculturalists and conservationists to meet their goals on their land and to preserve those goals for the future. It's really important for our state. But with that, I'll stay for questions, but I'd like to turn it over to our landowners that are on Zoom and here in person, of course.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is David Ellsbury. I own the Ellsbury Ranch near Sundance. 4 years ago, when my mother died, on the day of her death, she told me, "Don't you let happen to this place what happened to my place." I had 4 grandfathers, great-grandfathers, that came to Sundance in the 1880s. Of those 4, only 1 remains, and I have that. My mother, her family had hers since the 1880s there and through generations. And when my grandmother died, the place was given to my uncle. And my mother was fine with that. But when my uncle died, his wife got it. And almost immediately it went up for sale, and it was split up into 40-acre ranchettes. Many of them. It made my mother sick. And like I said, on her deathbed, she told me not to let this happen. So when I set up my trust, my place goes on to my kids and then on to my grandchildren. That's 6 generations in Sundance with the same name. The Ellsbury name has been here that long. So in looking at trusts, I came up with the Wyoming Stock Growers Land Trust. And I looked into that, and it had just what I was looking for, a way to keep our place together. Exactly 30 years ago, I had to, my uncle died. My dad and uncle were in partnership. And when my uncle died, I was trying to buy it from him. But when my uncle died, the family split our big place in half. My dad got half and they got half. But now I have that half. It tore my dad apart to split that place in two. And there again, in his dying days, he told me, don't you let this place be split up again. And I can't let it happen. So, with or without your support, I will go on with this easement, whether it's funded by you and you. I will donate it just to keep the land intact. The development is encroaching upon us so fast. It's terrible. We just lost 700 acres of lease ground a year ago because my old lady, when she died, she gave it to her kids, and immediately they put it up for sale. Already in 1 year, they're building houses on 40-acre chunks all over on that. We lost it. Well, we're not going to lose my place. Let me end in a quote by an old American Indian, a chief, I believe. He said, "This land does not belong to us. We belong to the land." And I'm sorry, I'm so emotional about this.
That's no worries.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Appreciate the history. And that's a beautiful country up there.
Well, there's more history than that.
Yes. Questions for Mr. Ellsbury? No, thank you so much for your testimony. We really appreciate it. And I've been up in that country, and I see why people would want to live there. But having a ranch up there and being an old ranch gal, I know how important it is to keep our lands the way they were meant to be. So appreciate your testimony. Anything else that you'd like to add, either one of you? Thanks for making the trip down. Thank you. That's a long haul. So.
It was, normally it's 300 miles, but yesterday it was 450.
Yeah, we appreciate it. That's really, really kind of you to do that. So thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and open it up. Is there any other testimony from anyone else? And oh, two online. Yes, we do. Go ahead. Let them in.
I have David Kane from SR Cattle Company.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I apologize for not being there in person. I was there Monday and Tuesday, had to come back and attend things at the ranch. I would just like to start by saying that I can echo a lot of what the previous testimony says. Our ranch has been in the family since 1882. We have went through several generational changes and lost portions of the ranch. It is very, and my son and his daughters are on the ranch with us as well, so that would be 5th and 6th generation. This easement is so important to the continuity of the ranch going forward. Legacy is what I'm all about. I just want to leave the ranch better when I leave than when it was when I got here, but I want to continue that in the ranch. The development pressure here in Sheridan County and on this beautiful ranch is just unbelievable. And I would just like to protect that for the future of ag. This particular easement sits in a kind of a unique place. There's already a conservation easement to the south, which used to be part of our ranch, that was lost in a generational change. There are 2 large parcels on each east and west side of the ranch. So this would block up of state land, I mean, excuse me. This would block up a really large area of protected land it's a lot easier to manage and protect an area with a larger parcel, and this would kind of complete that larger block. And I feel it's a very important thing for not only our operation going forward, but for the Sheridan community county as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't catch
Your
your
question.
Sir, I see you're from the SR Cattle Company, but I didn't catch your name. Do you want to introduce yourself?
David Kane.
Oh, David Kane. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
That, I think you're kind of in the same boat as the Ellsburys. I think you see the importance of keeping the land the way it was meant to be. So thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Kane? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. And I would just add one thing. My wife was also registered to testify, but you don't want to hear the same thing again. So she's going to decline.
Okay, thank you. I think we still have one other person on Zoom. If that's his wife? Okay, all right. If there's nobody else, then we will go ahead and close public testimony. And what is your pleasure on this bill? Move the bill. Move the bill. I think Senator Ellis made the motion. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. I think we've read through all the projects. I think you had an amendment. Yeah, can you get that to us and we'll read it in?
Madam Chair, thank you. Because I've got the one that came offline, my lines aren't going to match up. So
That's all right.
under section 1C, 2 little I. So great.
Okay.
So on page 2, line 21, the word south should be west.
Okay. Okay.
On line, page 3, line 15, the amount should be 55,777,715. And with a concurrent change in lines 13 and 14 in the written out.
Yeah, could you repeat that?
So that starting at page 13 where it's written out, it should say $59,777,715.
Okay. Did you get that, Doreen?
I've got it here.
Okay, yeah.
And then the final one would be on page 4, line 2, delete the word private.
Move the amendment.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
all right. Let's go ahead and ask for your thoughts on any questions or comments first. All right. All those in favor of those amendments, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, those amendments pass. Thank you. Anything on the bill besides those amendments that anyone has any questions or comments with? Okay, let's go ahead and take a roll call on this bill.
Thank you. Senate File 106, Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Ellis.
Aye.
Senator Guru is excused. Senator Jones. And Chairman Schuler.
Aye.
We have 4 ayes.
4 ayes. That bill is passed. Look forward to those projects, and thank all of you for your testimony, for making the trip down, and we appreciate all your information. Thanks so much. We're adjourned. That's, I was thinking that, yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you for the extra one. All right.
Yeah.